defines us is rather philosophical. But when it comes to biology, the answer is very clear: DNA. All life depends on some sort of replication with the ability to inherit information. And it was not until the 1940s that scientists discovered the chemical structure that is responsible for that task, which is, as we nowadays know, DNA. The genetic information needs to be copied 1,000,000 times during the lifespan of an organism, and so far it seems that every living cell uses DNA. DNA is an acronym and stands for desoxyribonucleic acid and can be visualized, and I guess all of you know that, as 2 long chains composed of 4 components. The basic components of DNA are the so-called nucleotides, which can be either adenine, cytosine, guanine, or thymine. The DNA also has a backbone, which is formed by phosphate groups and 5 carbon sugars. And these 5 carbon sugars lack one hydrogen group, and therefore they are called desoxyribo. In humans, the DNA is divided into 46 chromosomes. What you see here is a karyotype, and that's a visual representation of what our chromosomes look like. We've got the chromosomes 1 to 22. They're sorted by their size, and they're also the sex chromosomes X and Y. If you've got 2 X chromosomes, you're female. If you've got 1 X chromosome and 1 Y chromosome, you're male. There are some exceptions to that rule, but they're very rare. The structure of the DNA itself was rather complicated to ascertain, and it was not until the year 1953 when James Watson and Francis Crick postulated its 3-dimensional structure. And it's very important to say here that there were other scientists involved. For example, Rosalind Franklin, and hardly anyone knows her, even though she also contributed a substantial part to this structure. Of course, we need stable interactions for the DNA. So there have to be bonds between the nucleotides. A always pairs with T, C always with G. For an A to T bound, we only need 2 hydrogen bonds, whereas we need 3 for a G to C bound. So this structure of the DNA is actually the energetically most favorable constitution. The DNA has a minor and a major groove, and one turn consists of 10 base pairs. DNA has a polarity, as the phosphate group forms the 5' end and the hydroxy group forms the 3' end. This polarity is essential when it comes to the replication of DNA, which is actually a very complex process which involves a lot of different enzymes. The enzymes are proteins that accelerate certain chemical reactions, and for example, there's the helicase. The helicase has to unwind the 2 complementary DNA strands. DNA polymerase is responsible for adding new nucleotides, but it can only work in one direction. So for the other strand, it has to replicate some nucleotides and then kind of go back again. Therefore, we get some fragments, which are called Nagasaki fragments. And these fragments are put together by another enzyme, which is called ligase. So that's actually everything that defines us within these 3 billion base pairs. To sequence the whole genome was a huge task. It took over a decade. Over 3,000 scientists were involved, and the cost rose to about $3 billion. So every base costs about $1, which is incredible. It was more or less completed in 2003, and since then the field of genetics has exploded. There were so many new discoveries, and one discovery that was actually, let's say not what the scientists were expecting, is that our genome contains the information for only 20,000 genes, about 20,000 genes, which is not more than for many other organisms. So, your DNA is what you are. So I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.